Well, Coach Hale, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to talk some D-line play today, so thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Looking forward to joining on.
Well, Coach, you're there at Magnolia High School now, coaching the D-line, and actually, we in our conversations leading up to this, found out we had some similarities. Our paths have not directly crossed, but maybe indirectly. I grew up in Quinlan Ford. Over here in our neck of the woods, we actually played those guys the third round this year. Talk to us a little bit about just your background and start off by filling us in on your football journey up to this point.
Absolutely. So I started playing football in junior high at Quinlan Bowles Junior High, which is a 1A. We had about 80 kids in the junior high and about 100 kids at the high school, so super small school. And then my dad, he's a coach. He made the transition to J.J. Pierce High School in Richardson. So I went from 1A junior high to a 5A high school and spent about 2 years there. And then finally he moved again, spent my last 2 years back in Quinlan Ford and graduated there in 2012. And then I had the opportunity right after that to go play football at ETBU. Played all 4 years there. Loved my time there. Played for Coach Josh Ergel. He's a great guy. Stay in touch with him every once in a while still. Touch base with him. Learned a lot of football from him and a lot about life. And then during our time there, we kind of helped turn a program around to be like a tri-ASE champion, which is the first time in the modern history ETBU had done that. So it was a big kind of thing for my life and kind of taught me a lot about just kind of how to win, kind of how to turn things around. And then from there, at my senior banquet for football in college, my president of the university asked me to come be an admissions counselor for the university and come recruit for the school, and if I wanted to get my master's for free. And so I agreed to do that and jumped on and spent about a year and a half doing that. And so I was kind of in the college recruiting world, going out to different schools and kind of learning the ropes about how to do that. It really wasn't my avenue I thought I was going to get into. And then my position coach came up to me, approached me in the office and said he told me he was going to be resigning and asked if I should apply for the D-line spot at ETBU. And I said, well, I don't really have any formal coaching experience. It'd be really interesting to see if they give me the full, that full-time gig. And so I went through about 4 interviews, and lo and behold, they let me have the job. Don't know if that was a smart idea at the time for them or not, but they let me do it. And so I spent about a year and a half at ETBU from that spring to the next fall and spring at ETBU. Coached the D-line there. We went 7-3 that year, led the ASE in sacks and tackles for a loss, had a good season. And then I had my son, and my wife was a head basketball coach and head track coach at a high school at the time, and our schedules just didn't really work well with having an infant child that was going to be in daycare on a day-to-day basis and trying to figure out, who was going to pick him up and how I was going to be there, especially if I was out of town or if she was on a long trip on a tournament or something. So what we did was we decided to move to Houston. So I found the first job I could at Creekside Park Junior High and spent 2 years there. Worked in Tomball, was in Tomball ISD, so I worked for Coach Flanagan and Coach Handel and Coach Kypd and that staff, and they treated me real well. Got to help them out on Friday nights and help them out in the spring a whole lot. And then I kind of started putting my, feelers back out for other jobs at the high school level. And I made the jump over to Magnolia High School, which is where I'm currently at now, and the D-line coach and strength and conditioning coordinator. I've loved every minute here with Coach Craig Martin and Coach Chase Hargis. We've had a really good last 2 years. We went 10-2 last year. We were 8-0, undefeated district champs, and played a lot of really good football teams in our district, including Magnolia West and College Station and Lufkin. And this year wasn't as successful, but still went, had a good playoff run, lost to Longview in the playoffs. It was, Coach King coaches a good program over there, and they were pretty tough to play. And it's kind of where I'm at today, and loving life and enjoying my time coaching the D-line over there.
Yeah, being over there in Magnolia, close to my neck of the woods from where I grew up there in Huntsville. So you mentioned playing at ETBU and then getting on as a coach there after you were admissions counselor. Whenever you get a job like that at a smaller school, whether it's D2, D3, NAIA, a lot of the times you do wear a lot of different hats in addition to your normal day-to-day coaching responsibilities. How did that help you become a better coach today, and how did you use that experience to help you as a coach today on the high school level?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my additional jobs I was gifted with was being the academic coordinator at ETBU. And so I was in charge of making sure everybody maintained their eligibility, maintained enough credits, maintained proper GPA throughout the semester, made sure they were I had to structure the study hall program and make sure kids were going to study hall. And so let's say a kid had below a 2.75 GPA and they were required to go to 3 hours of study hall a week. And I was making sure they went to study hall on Sunday nights and was sitting in with kids and teaching kids to kind of like how to structure their college schedules. And so how that kind of helped me was, it wasn't just me doing it. It was a lot of the other coaches that held to step in and, jump up at the time. And so, because they had to go work with their position group or work with a certain kid. And, it taught me a lot about kind of how to like, help coordinate, with other coaches and speak to other adults and just kind of like how to get, other grown men to do, a job, especially for a guy like me. I was 23 at the time and I was working with a bunch of guys that were all, 30, 40 and 50. And, it's a pretty, you don't want to make sure, you don't want the starting kid, to lose his eligibility, and then that didn't look too good on my part. So besides that, having to work with other adults and then also just, managing kids in a realm that's outside of football too. And, learning to help them manage their academic life and then their athletic life as well. And so, I mean, that really does play into what we do today, is because, you have a lot of kids that, they're in school all day and then they have to jump out and come, we're expecting them to be all football. And so just kind of learning how to help manage that as well. So kind of both those things helped me out a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I can, definitely see where that would give you some credibility, even with your kids now. As a high school coach, you've seen the other side of things and know exactly what kids need to have as far as their academics go and how they maintain their eligibility and are able to qualify for schools. One thing I've always been curious about is when guys jump into college coaching and it's their their first job, is how does the recruiting part work for you? Like, was it, because I've wondered this too, as I see these, as this kind of into the fall, we really started seeing guys coming through the, on the road recruiting. And sometimes you see some of those guys who are really, really young and you kind of feel for them a little bit because you can tell they hadn't been out on the road very long. What was that experience for you like? And did you have anybody kind of take you along and say, hey man, this is how you do this? Or was it just, hey, go get it?
Yeah. So a bit of both. So I had the DBE coach on staff at the time was a really good recruiter. He'd been through number of other universities, and he was in his mid-30s at the time. And Coach Dylan Swears, I think he's at Saxey High School now. He did a great job, kind of like helping me, kind of like this is what you do. This is kind of who you go talk to. This is who you meet. And I kind of had a leg up, I felt like, in a lot of ways because, I went to colleges and I went to high schools already recruiting for the university. It wasn't from the perspective of me just being from athletics, and I'm going to specifically just recruit athletes. I was recruiting just general population kids, but I had all the ins and outs and answers about, what they needed to know and what they needed to do. And I was already accustomed to talking with kids about that process and what that would look like. And so it really wasn't that big of a jump for me to kind of have to start doing that. And when you hit the road, a lot of high school coaches I know get, really upset if you don't go talk to them first. And so that was kind of my big priority. And I was like, I don't want to, upset a coach because, you get a lot of smaller schools that blanket offer, kids without even talking to their coach. And, a lot of times, of me understanding this side of it now, being a coach, if I never knew or never heard of a coach before, they went and offered one of our kids, would I be happy for the kid? 100% absolutely. Would I feel like, could I have helped them a little bit differently? Like, how much do they actually know about our kid in the process? And so I feel like, going and sitting down with a lot of the, the head football coaches and the recruiting coordinators from the different school really gave a big, outlook about who you were looking into. And they would give a really good analysis about what the kid was about. And they would most of the time shoot you the truth about, were they a good kid? Do they show up on time? Do they miss things? Do they love football? And I think that, when you get on the road, you start doing it enough times, because you go to, I think we would go to 6 to 8 high schools a day, because, being a smaller school, you kind of got to like net your broadcast and, shoot your net out there a little farther and try to see what all you can find, especially being at a school and, the ASC conference that, battles with Hardin-Simmons and Mary Hardin-Baylor. And, you're really working to, fighting against them to get other top tier kids that can get there. And so anything to get a competitive edge in that aspect for me was just, learning how to recruit from the school and learning how to recruit from Coach Swears, and just meeting a lot of high school football coaches that are just really easy to talk to, because we would sit down and talk kind of how we are right now, and they were real nice and real cordial to come in and sit down and meet with me.
Yeah, that's interesting. And one thing that I've always wondered about. Okay, well, let's jump into talking about your defense there at Magnolia. You guys, as we talked about in previous conversations, you guys are very similar to Austin Westlake. And anyone who's been paying attention to high school football in the state of Texas, even remotely, understands that those guys have been extremely successful. Have now won back-to-back state championships running that defense. So among other things, I know you guys, you play both odd and even fronts, and will carry both schemes in your weekly game plan. Walk us through an overview of your defense first, and how you handle that. If you have a hybrid player, who is he? How do you use that guy, et cetera?
So we base everything out of our 4-2-5 defense. That's where we get the ground for it. We play quarters in the back end, and our safeties are pretty heavy in the run fits. And so the whole premise of our defense is to make things run sideways and to make things not run between the A and B gaps. And so if you've ever seen anybody run the ball between A and B gaps, because obviously someone got out of gap or a linebacker misfit, because we spill everything and then we'll spill everything again. We call it a spill philosophy. We're trying to make things bounce, and really everything kind of run game wise will turn into some form of like outside run, essentially, for our defense. And so we start at the 4-2-5, and then we'll kind of transition into our 3-3 stack. And week to week, we kind of bounce back and forth, and in game we bounce back and forth between the two of them. And so it really just depends on which one we feel give us a competitive advantage, or a whatever advantage we might need to have in the game. It really just depended upon situations and schemes that we were seeing. I think there's pros and cons to both, but essentially, even if we were playing our 3-3 stack, we were, sending a backer, sending someone to create that 4-2-5 look again. And so, when we get into the 3-3 stack is when when you mentioned the hybrid player, that's where we get to utilize that, and it is our Sam backer. And so we move him around quite a bit. He will line up at stand-up DN. He'll move inside to play D tackle. He'll back up and look like a Mike linebacker at times. He'll step out and be in a true cover down position. We ask him to do, quite a few things. But it's not a freak athlete we have there. He's a good athlete, don't get me wrong, but he's not Jadeveon Clowney or, Tyrann Mathieu out there playing football. He's, we keep him within a wheel box of things that he can do. And so, for the most part, he's a kind of a true DN linebacker guy for us. And so we'll just move him around and kind of find different spots to fit him into.
Yeah, and as I kind of already alluded to, referencing Austin Westlake, we did have Coach Salazar on last spring and talked about this. Now, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they base out of 3-3 and then they get into 4-2-5, or are they doing it the same way?
If I'm correct, they're basing out of 4-2-5 and getting into 3-3.
Okay.
They could quote me totally wrong on that one. I haven't watched enough of their film and talked to Coach Salazar about that, but I know our DC, Coach Hargis, probably that's where he came from. And we start with a 4-2-5, and so even when we're in 3-3 stack, we're trying to get back to that shell in some way. So that's how we teach it.
Yeah, and it's not super important, but I wanted to ask this. So you kind of mentioned that it just sort of depends on the personnel or looks or things that you're getting, without giving a whole lot away. What can you tell me about hey guys, this is going to be a big 3-3 stack week for us, or this is going to be a more of a 4-2-5 thing? Like, what is it that makes you get into that stuff, and determines how much you're going to use either or in a game plan?
Right. And so week to week, when we're really looking at how we install a 3-3 stack, when we are just going to send our Sam backer or send our Will backer off the edge, we're just making them our new 7 technique defensive end. So our 7 technique is about a yard wider off the tackle. It's noted as a 7 just because he's a yard wider. If he gets a tight end, he's still inside the tight end, but he's just wider. And he's a, squat to squeeze player. He's going to play the quarterback and slow play things. And where it gets different for our 3-3 stack is that stand up is our 7 tech, but he doesn't always squat and squeeze. He can blitz it. And so, because he's truly a blitzing linebacker off the edge. And so, where we get advantages of playing stack is that we can speed people up by playing stack. And then additionally, I think that one of the big ones in my mind that kind of comes to it is that when you're playing a lot of gap scheme teams that pull people a lot, like counters, a lot of counters and powers, we're going to gain an extra spiller off the edge. And so, because how we play our stack is we have 2 5 techniques and a head up nose. And so, playing the guys as an outside 5 technique allows us to, on a true down block, they can redirect the tackle and then chase off the butt, and they can be the first primary spiller, and then the next linebacker could be the next spiller, and then you have 2 free tacklers still in the box. And so we're still allowing things to kind of still bounce and spill outside. So let's say that you get a team that ran a heavy counter play where they're going to send GT and the fullback across at somebody. Well, we have someone for all 3, because we can have the DN spill the first, the Sam linebacker spill the second, the next linebacker spill the third, and then we have a tackling Mike or a rover or our safety, or it could be a corner, depending upon who the force player was at the time. So, it really depends upon kind of what we're getting out of it. But, also, if we're playing stack, it gives us an advantage of having an extra cover guy in the game. That's pretty, obvious for a lot of reasons. So if we're getting teams that we feel are getting into empty sets, if we want to go true drop 8, we can drop 8 and bluff out of it if we wanted to, and kind of run some simulated pressure. It's a lot of different looks we can make out of it. And so we can make more looks out of it, but that doesn't mean we don't like our base front. Because we still move and kind of rock and go out of that. And so I actually have some clips of that if you would like me to kind of share that with you guys.
Yeah, let's do it. And while you're pulling those up, let me ask you this question: How are you setting your front? Like, are you keeping that hybrid player in the boundary? So if he is in a stack, he's in the boundary. Do you like to play him to the field, and then you can you can stack him over that way? Like, how do you set your front with that guy?
Yes and no. By base rule, he's the Sam always goes to the field or goes with our bandit. He's going to follow wherever our bandit goes. And so, but that doesn't mean that he's always the walk-up guy coming off the edge. We could send someone else off the edge as well. It could be our will linebacker, it could be a corner, it could be a safety. But really, how we kind of set it is, if we wanted to create our 4-2-5 again, we can have him slide the front down, and we'll bump a DN down inside to a 2 or 3 technique. And we can set the front again strong or weak, depending upon how we were wanting to align to it. So we can the stack allows us to kind of get back to any look out of our 4-2-5 we want to, because we have our DNs, trained up to go through all the D tackle stunts and go through playing a 3 technique and playing a 2 technique as well. It's not what they major in, but there's still something that we can do out of it. And we have kids that are confident enough not to get knocked off the ball and can still stay gap sound and do their job in our defense. And so we're not asking them to 2 gap to do anything crazy, so they can hold their gap and do that. So what we're looking at here is we're having on my screen. Can you guys see that? Couldn't tell.
Yeah, Coach, we're good. Yep, we can see it.
Perfect. All right. So what we're looking at here is we have our Sam, number 6. He's walked up. We have 2 5 techniques in our head up nose. What we're playing here, they're in trips right now, so we're going to send him off the edge and just kind of create our normal 4-2-5 front. We'll end up slanting this defensive end right here, 53. He's going to be slanting into the B gap just to create our new 3 technique. We'll end up moving 71 into the opposite A gap, and then he can play normal 5 technique. And so, where I think that we differ a little bit from the Westlake and the South Lakes is that how we play this position, the 5 technique, is because what we do with them is that, they can still make this call out of it. But I think that we live and die by it. So last season, about week 3, I was talking to our DC and said, we called a rub technique. And, we kept running into the situations and game plan of saying, why don't we just always rub the 5 tech? We need to rub the 5 technique here. We need to rub the 5 technique here. And then finally I just said, well, why don't we always rub him and make it a base rule? And when we don't want him to, then we can lock him. And so Basically what that means is he's like a heavy 5 technique, a heavy DN. And so if he gets a base block coming at him, then he can post it for outside and C gap for a full 1,001 count. Then he's going to rip across into B gap. And so he lines up outside but takes away B gap. And, you know, people ask, well, you know, why don't you just slant him in B gap? Well, we could do that. And, you know, we do that too. But by allowing him to stay outside, it allows him to also be a contained rush on pass, because he can kind of, you know, redirect off his path and not have to be stuck in B gap, and you don't lose your edge at that point. And so we work kind of pretty heavily on that, but I'll kind of run through the clips so you can kind of see what it looks like. But so we have the Sam up there coming off the edge. We should be ripping the D line, and the 21 down here should be running, just playing a base 5 technique rubbing. So playing here, get a little ISO, you know, and the backside tackle, what teams started really doing to us, because our DNs do play pretty heavy and, you know, we'll move back inside as they try to, you know, gap hinge and cut us off and getting into the B gap. So whenever they step inside, we have our guys attack top shoulder, which he does a good job of here. So it looks like he's kind of taking it on thick, but he's got his left arm on the bicep over here. He pulls down across, rips through, and he puts himself in the B gap. And so it cleans it up for our linebackers too. So makes it a lot easier for them. But so for example, and then going back to the top of this with number 6, our Sam, with him coming off the edge, he's just, you know, he's a blitzing linebacker. He's speeding things up. So it's a different look out of it from us just playing our normal 7-3-2-5. So here's the end zone clip of it. See if we can get that rolling. '71 kind of does a decent job. We should kind of want him more on the guard right there. He kind of gets washed a little bit, which kind of creates that bigger B gap for the end. But the end does a really good job here of ripping through and kind of add himself into the play. You know, we really kind of like pride ourselves on making things run sideways, and we're not going to let a lot of big runs kind of pop in between the tackles. And so just a way for us to be able to get to that. Here we go. So I'll walk this back, and really you see it better from the end zone clip from this. So here's again our Sam kind of moving around. We use him to kind of like, he has to know the entire front, because we have him do many different things. And so our Sam 6 right here is going to walk down and he's going to become our next defensive tackle. And so he's going to walk down and run a stunt over here with our other big DT 71. Both ends should end up rubbing at this point, because in our base stack, we don't have a stunt call on. They play base 5 technique. So they should both be rubbing in B gap, working inside, making things run lateral. But number 6 does a good job of getting underneath and that making himself into the play. So, you know, we do a good job pre-snap and moving around. I think that, you know, when you get lined down and then here comes a linebacker walked up and he gets in a stance, and it just creates another 4 down front. So we went from being in completely odd front to even front pretty quick.
Is that Sam's alignment always, is it always the same? Does it change? Will you stack him, you know, play him in a 50 and bump the other linebackers over? Will you always have him walked up on the line of scrimmage coming off like he's coming off the edge? What's his alignment?
So if we were just playing true stack, he's going to be in a 50 and hipped outside his defensive end, because he can be covered down. He doesn't have V gap. He doesn't have to be in a rush, because if we just called stack and our base coverage behind it, and then what we're going to have him do is just, he can still play that overhang spot and still be in that little window, being a little, depending upon what coverage we're in, it depends on what his drop's going to be. So he can sit over here and kind of let that things fold and kind of pop to him, and he can step to stack down there off the tackle, off of anything that's going to bounce back outside. If he gets flow away, he can slow play things over the top and kind of go real slow, kind of wait for the cutback and see, or if there's any run throughs, he can kind of take those. But if, you know, we're having him bleed the blitzer, he can show up late and walk up outside this defensive end, and then he's giving them just a quick call for them to tell them which direction they got to go. It could tell them we go 1 gap, it could tell them to go 2 gaps, it could tell them to run a stunt. And we kind of build those things in throughout the week, depending upon, you know, what we want out of him. And so we'll, you know, make sure we go through all the checks and all the walk-up calls for what he's got to do. But again, he could end up anywhere within this box. I mean, he could walk in here, he could walk over here, he could be in this gap here. It could be stacked back 5 yards. It could be in the middle of the field. It kind of depends on what we want out of him. It depends on what the call is. If that answers your question.
Yeah, and you know, an issue that, and I'm sure you guys see this a lot when you're in your 4-2-5 stuff, is teams want to put formation in the boundary. So is that a situation where you try to put him over there into that boundary to where you can bump him out and have him bang on whether it's a number 2 or number 3 receiver? You know, is that something you guys see a lot?
This season, we didn't get a lot of formation in the boundary. You know, really the only situation I can think about maybe when we did is if they put, you know, a lot of heavy sets, you know, where they get a lot of tackle over, heavy tackles and fullbacks move over to the boundary, and we'll have them over there, and nothing really changed. Like, because of our base rules and a lot of things, it doesn't really change what he has to do. So we don't really ask him to have to go drop and run real deep in coverage a whole lot. Like, he doesn't have to go do that. Like, he is like a true, you know, edge hybrid guy. He's just moving around the box, and whenever he is in a coverage position, his coverage is fairly limited. I mean, not saying that he's not always that, and I think that depending upon who we have there, we could do more or less with. But for him, he's a pretty good all-around overall football player. And so he's only about, you know, 6 foot, 200 pounds, but he can move pretty well. And so he's good enough to drop into space. He's good enough. He's big and physical enough to come off the edge, and obviously big enough to come add himself in the mix here at D tackle. And so if we get FIB, I mean, he's probably going to go to the boundary anyway, because that's where we're probably going to set our front anyway, or set our bandit and set our secondary. But that's not necessarily like how we would always do it. That's just by base rule. I mean, kind of, you know how it goes. It depends on game plan of what we wanted, but base rule will probably put him into the boundary. But here's the next clip. And some of these clips might be a little repetitive from what we got. So here's 6 again. He's at a true cover down position over here. So he's actually hipped outside the box. And so we're getting trips again. And so he's over here just kind of, so he can be closer to the number 3 receiver and can be in that zone window. This DN can still be a 5 technique and rub. We have our will linebacker walked up now, coming off the edge, and that's not necessarily saying that's always going to be what happens when they walk up. I mean, these guys bouncing in and around sometimes, and they'll show up late and they'll blitz late. And so it's something that, you know, years of kind of practice and timing have worked with. But DN's working. I'll show you from the end zone view. It's always better. DN's working inside, ripping into the B gap, taking away the first look. So he's getting held up with the tackle. Sam linebacker comes off the edge. We would have liked him to spill the guard, but gets there late, kind of sneaks behind him, and makes the tackle. The backside DN rubs again, and that's fine with how he does it. He doesn't really always have to post him up. Sometimes we kind of give him the freedom every once in a while. Once they get competent enough to rub, we tell them we can rub or take it. You can take the gap or rub it, but we need you to, you know, hold outside for a full 1 count, essentially. So we need you to present outside and then work back underneath. And so he's doing a good job. And so, you know, we've had a lot of our DNs add themselves into plays late, or like being the backside player on a play. They try to cut us off on like power, and they end up making the play in the backfield pretty frequently. And it's just out of our base defense. We're not calling anything special to make that happen. It's just what he does. So helps us out. Here's just our normal 4-2-5. Again, we got our guys rubbing and working back underneath. Just cleaning it up. So really, because the reason why I wanted to show this clip was just because how our ends are taught to rub underneath and take away B gap, and you know they a lot of times do make the tackle, but you know this does alter the back's path. Like he has to go jump, and I know he's got a guy in his face, but he can't just jump in and hit it downhill in B gap right now. He's got 18 kind of sitting here, unblocked, ready to make the play. And if he went in 18, wanted to trigger faster, then could have been a TFL pretty easily. I mean, it's an unblocked player right there. So kind of worked out for us in that scenario. I'll show you the end zone clip of it to make it a little cleaner. Moving across, 18 jumps in, makes the play. You know, we do a lot of reps at this throughout the week that kind of cleans up the run fits, and we do a lot of slowed down fits for this as well, so our kids know where to go. Perfect. Okay. So here's 6 again, just kind of giving a different look to it. And so he's actually executing a pretty similar stunt to what he was doing before whenever we had him walk up and play D-tackle, but he's just kind of standing up doing the same thing. This time we're getting past, and so he's rushing that gap. We have a stunt going on the backside between 71 and 21. And so just different looks out of it, really. You know, we wanted him to kind of move around and have the freedom to kind of be where, you know, don't always kind of show where you're going, move around. He's going to bump and get people in the right spot. He's got to be a smart football player, obviously, and kind of be pretty, you know, well coached up. But just, you know, nothing special out of it, but just kind of where he kind of lines up and where he goes. So here's another look.
A question I might have asked before. I might have asked Coach Salazar this before, but where does that guy go for individual?
Everywhere. So depends on the week. If we're asking him to do more stand-up work where he's coming off the edge, he's going to come work with me. If he's going to spend more time kind of backed up off the ball, then he's going to go with our linebacker coach, Coach Childs. Kind of depends, and it might be a week where he splits it, and so he might spend Indy with me for the first 2 days, and then he's going to go to, you know, Pascal and linebacker inside the 3rd day. Just really depends on the week. We don't have a specific hybrid coach, but the linebacker coach, the DC, and I all kind of like share time working with him, and so it just kind of depends on week to week what it's going to. And so the hybrid's actually not in on the defense this time, but this is just another look of what we do. And so we're in our 4-2-5 front, and we don't, you could say, like, you know what we're going to do, and like, yeah, we know the ends are going to do this, but we move them around enough. I think it gives people, you know, a guessing game of what we might end up doing. So here's a way for us to kind of slide the front back to a stack look, to an odd look from our even front. And so just a quick little call pre-snap where we got the nose bumping head up to be a head up nose. The 3 technique bumps out to a 5 technique, and then our DM pops up to be the same linebacker. And so we just kind of jumped into the stack look. And so we coach those guys up on kind of being the outside blitzer at that point, then add themselves back into the play. So backside DN's rubbing in. 71's doing a good job holding an A gap right there. There's a fun unit.
Is number 40 there? If you run that back, behind number 40? You know, your 2 linebackers back there. Is he a linebacker or a rolled up safety? What?
Those are both our inside linebackers.
Okay.
So 40s are Mike and 18s are Will, and so
okay.
We're playing a match coverage, and so that changes their alignment up a little bit about what they'll do and kind of what their responsibilities are. And what 18's essentially doing is that he's pretty much trying to find the fullback.
I got you.
He's matched up on him, and so
that
way he can play faster to it. And so let's see if he actually does a good job of it. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. He does, and I figured that's what he was reading, but was just asking about his alignment there.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of teams, I mean, I think that a lot of teams would think that if they got that look, they're like, yeah, we're going to run power and ISO at you all day long. And that's what we coach our kids not to allow to happen. So I think that's something that, you know, it's a testament to us because, and what our, you know, all of our staff kind of what they do a really good job. Our linebacker coach does, and our corner coach and our safety coach and our DC and our DT coach all do a great job at it. And so, you know, we try to take away those inside run lanes. So let's see what I got. Here's just the Sam walked up again, coming back off the edge. Nothing special there. I'll skip through that one. So this is just us bumping the front to more live look at it from us going to base, moving back to our stack front, kind of adding into it pre-snap. Just another way for us, like I said, it's just another way for us to kind of move the front around a little bit, you know, and kind of give people a different look pre-snap, because I think it breaks a lot of O-line's rules about what they want to do and how they want to get there. Because, you know, pre-snap if we're moving or post-snap if we're moving again, it kind of, you know how that works. It changes how their landmarks are going to be. So I don't think I'm a rocket scientist at this. I don't think I have it all figured out, but I think what we do is pretty good. I think that, you know, a lot of other, you know, with Westlake and Southlake and us running it, I think we've all been pretty successful at doing what we do, and I think that it's worked for us.
No, it's interesting. We do some stuff that's pretty similar, and have kind of in the past with what we used to run under our previous coordinator as well. We're 4-2-5, but we can bump out one of our defensive ends who is a converted linebacker, and really kind of like what you just showed there, where he bumps out, and now he can come off the edge. He can drop into coverage in the flats if he needs to, if we want him to do that.
Yep.
And we haven't done it where it's like a pre-snap stem like that, but typically we'll line up in it, but we have calls built in for that same reason that you're talking about. And really that's something we'll probably build on this spring and show more of, this next season. Man, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on one second. What was I about to ask you? Oh, okay. So I'm just curious here. How does tempo affect switching from 3 to 4 down front? Do you have some calls? I'm sure you have some calls that are like, hey, these are our hot calls, or these are our, tempo calls, and we're going to get in this, and that kid's now not going to move around. Do teams try to do that to you to get to where you can't move him around so much?
Yeah, they try. So, that's the cool part about being, if we are in stack and, we want to move the front a little bit, it's pretty easy. We make a lot of one-word calls for them. So when our Mike backer has to relay it back out, really, if we're running on the fly, it's one word, and the kids know what to do, and they can adjust to it. But let's say that they're motioning and tempoing, then that's the cool part, is our Sam and our Will linebacker are almost interchangeable, and so they both can kind of do the same thing. And so we can even, we can rock and roll those guys. One goes back up to the top, and rolls in the box and plays more like the inside backer, and one rolls back down and becomes a defensive end. If we get motion quick, we can make a one quick call to the D line and change the whole stunt. If we're in our base front, we can easily, slant the D line somewhere else from where we want to real quick, or we could call the stunt, or we could make the one word blitz call, which, is pretty easy. And so I think having one word calls makes it pretty, efficient for us. And we work on the tempo, and we work on that. We try to emulate that the best we can in practice, where, we're getting our kids moving quickly and having to get a call, relay it in, and then when in doubt, set the ball. And I heard Coach Salazar say this, so I can't even take credit, but, set the ball strong and play ball. So, there's a lot of credit to that, a lot of fact to that. If we can get lined up and just execute what we want.
Absolutely, Coach. That's no doubt about that. Okay, so let's talk about. Did you? I'm sorry. Before we move on, did you have any other clips that you wanted to show or talk through?
Yeah, I can show this one last thing. So, this is the last kind of thing that we did, and it was one of our 3rd and long calls. I'm not sure. I can't even take credit for getting this. We had. I got this from Craig Rowe online. We kind of just looked at some of his stuff and tried to implement it the best we could. We kind of adapted it to what, worked for us a little bit, but it's a 3rd and long call where we get our D line wider. And so get the end zone clip of this. And so what we have here is that I would have liked 53 to have been outside the tight end here. And so we're going to give 2 ghost 9 techniques. And so we're like wide 9s, because we have our Sam backer walked up over here in the corner. And so he's a wide 9 as well. And then when I give you back the end zone clip, we have 21 and a 5 technique. So when you look at it, what's in between the tackles is just 1-2 technique, like head up 2 technique. And so the thought process behind it is we want to draw the center and the guard to our 2 technique. And so we're going to have him move and slant inside post snap. So we want him to kind of attract attention of him. We're probably going to get 53 one-on-one with the tackle over here, so that's a good matchup for us. And then over here with 21, we're going to have him. He's usually, so you want to make your best pass rusher this position that's doing this, because they're going to be the person that's going to be having to think on their feet a little bit. And so him and the DT, him and the 2 technique have to work a little together in this. So 21 is going to slant inside and go B gap post snap. And so he's going to be trying to attack the outside shoulder of the guard. And so if the guard oversets him, he has a 2-way go. He can jump inside, but when he jumps inside, we tell him he's got to push the opposite A gap. because we want him to take away that run lane. 71 is going to try to bull the inside shoulder of the guard right here. Then he'll press and work to opposite shoulder of the quarterback. So you got to have a little bit of a stunt in there if 21 goes inside. So we teach 71, if he sees his numbers flash and see his color flash, then he's got to start pressing to the opposite shoulder of the quarterback. 21, if he feels like he can win through B gap, then he's going to stay B gap, and 71 can stay on this side of on the same side of the quarterback from where he originally started. And then from off screen where you can't see, we have number 6 over here and a wide 9. And so what 53 and him are trying to do is keep the quarterback in the pocket and let 21, 71 go wreak havoc. And so I think it kind of messes with a lot of people because you're trying to figure out, in terms of like, are you going to bob this? Are you going to slide this? Or, how you want to half slide it? Like, how do you want to try to block and attack it? And, our O-line, we've repped it against our O-line guys, and we've had them run every single different thing at it they could. So to see how we can kind of like coach our kids up to beat what they're seeing and getting. And so I'll run through it, and we'll run through it from the wide clip because that makes a good look out of it. So like I said, 53, I kind of would have liked him to be more outside the tight end, but he does a good job here of kind of posting up. Like, we teach them the long arm and kind of like, be sure that I'm not running past the quarterback. Like, the quarterback can't get outside of me, and I'm not going to run by him. I got to keep him stuck in the pocket. And so him and 6 have the same job. They're coming up the field. I'd like 6 to come a little faster. I'm not hating what he's doing, but I think that he can come with a little bit more intensity. 71 is doing a good job hogging up center and guard. It gives 21 a one-on-one on 68, which is kind of the matchup we wanted. And so 21 wins his one-on-one. He goes outside, sack. So I'll show you the end zone side of that real quick. Top. He wins. Boom. So works for us. Then here it is again. So this time that was out of our stack the last time. That was out of stack personnel. We coached this up to where we can make it out of our base personnel or our stack personnel. And we can run this from both sides. And we can also run stunts out of this too, we've built upon. So it's not always the same thing you're getting out of what we're showing you. So on this one, 71 is going to be our 5 technique. He's a pretty good D lineman for us. And then 53 is going to be our 9 technique, and 21 is going to be our 9 technique. 42 and here's going to be our 2 technique. 21's wrong at telling him to widen out some more. So there is, we do coach kids that are high school kids, and that's how that works. But the whole premise of it is, 71 probably could have gave a little bit more effort there and kind of pressed in some more. But 21 does a good job of just trying to maintain where he's at. He wins his one-on-one and sack fumble to win for us. But that's just a pre-snap look out of it with the 5 techniques working in 2 technique, and we got our 2 wide guys and worked out for us. And here's the last clip of it. So there's 71 again being our 5 technique, 21's a 9, 53 is a 9, 42 is going to be the 2 technique. 71 does a lot better job this time pressing inside. He wins inside. 42 begins to see it and starts to work back outside, but I think he kind of sees where the quarterback's at that point and just decides to go. 53 does a good job holding up in the pocket, and so does 21. They make sure they kind of shut the rush down and start to kind of get back to where he can't escape or step up in the pocket. But it was a good stunt for us to turn into a lot of sacks and a lot of pressures, and I can't take full credit for it. I beg, borrow, and steal from everybody. So.
Okay, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to throw a scenario out there. So you're running that right there, and you have your Ghost 9 guy, and they flare the back. Is he blitz peel, or do you have a backer behind it, or someone that's accounting for that back out?
We'll have someone else account for that. They don't have to be involved with that unless we call a blitz or call something on. We're going to have them dropping. We can give that look in that alignment and then run something else out of it, obviously. But no. If we were just running our true stunt, bird stunt out of that, we call it the bird stunt. If we run bird out of it, they get to be rush guys. And so we kind of take the pressure off of them and just let the rest of the guys behind them play in coverage and let them go get after the quarterback.
I always usually talk about D-line, coaching progression and everyday drills and things like that. And so we won't necessarily go through all of that, but I will ask you just to give us an idea, for us guys who are always looking for ways to maybe revamp or spice up our individual time, like how do you break down your individual time? And what are some things that you really like to cover and make sure that you cover, especially, with your guys, operating out of two different fronts? It sounds like it's not a big difference for you either way because you are playing outside shades on both sides. But how do you organize your individual time in season?
So I'm actually going to share my screen one more time with you guys because this is kind of where we get the basis of what front or kind of what I want to show them. And so kind of what I'm working with week to week. And so I, like, again, can't take credit for building this. I stole this from Randall Joyner. He's at Ole Miss. And so
I think we all stole that from him at
yeah. So I'm sure y'all seen this, and y'all started probably picking from this. But I use this, and so how I used this was I would go through and I would grade the tackles out and grade the centers and the guards, and our DT tackle coach would do that as well. And so what we did was I would go through and I would start marking down what blocks most frequently came from those guys. And so, like, we're from the guard, the tackle, I would add tight ends to this too and grade them out. And so that way we can kind of get an idea of like what blocks we're going to start seeing this week. And so that would help me organize my block recognition time. So I'm not just running random blocks at them week to week. I'm kind of giving them a little bit more specific to what they're going to get. And then I would show them, and this is what I would give my guys week to week. And so, like, a lot of teams give their coaches or give their players a scout report, which is really big. It has a bunch of, all the receiver sets on it as well, which is great, but when you're working with just D linemen, they don't look out, outside the box a whole lot. And so we try to give them looks for what they're actually going to see. And so that way they can start kind of game planning what runs are going to come at them and how they can kind of start getting an idea of, like, when I see this formation or this personnel set or this jersey number grouping for, we had a team that, only, ran certain plays behind certain people when they were in certain combinations of each other because they moved the lines around, like, what was coming at me week to week, what kind of pass pros were I going to start facing against and what kind of screens was I getting. And so kind of to wrap this back up. So, like, we would use this to kind of figure out what kind of O lineman we were getting from the run game and the pass game. So I could tell my guys, hey, he's a mauler. He's going to come out real heavy on you guys, and he's going to, like, fire out and try to, drive you, knock you off the ball. Well, that's going to probably turn into a quicker rub technique for us because we're going to use his momentum. We're going to try to use all he's got against him. And so if he's going to, like, fire out into us, then we'll use momentum against him. We'll punch, get extended, and then we'll rip across and get into the B gap a lot quicker than we normally would. If he was a leaner, and if he was a position blocker trying to turn us out of the gap, then we can work more on the gap hinge block throughout the week, and we can work on them attacking top shoulder. And so that's just kind of how I organize my block rec time. But week to week, if you guys have kind of already seen this, I won't kind of like go deep through it so much. But week to week, I had about 40 to 50 minutes of indie time, and that's kind of that scouting report is kind of set up the structure for my indie. And so if in the past, usually the first part of practice for me was 10 minutes I'd spend on pass rush, with 10 quick minutes. It was usually the pre-practice time anyway, where most of the other guys were working special teams. And so it was a quick way because before the start of practice for us to kind of like steal that time because we didn't work at any time. The rest of the time we spent was working on the run game and kind of working on stopping the run. And so we would spend 10 minutes on it. And so usually Mondays I would work on a double swipe pass rush move for guys that had high hands that would shoot high at us. I would work Tuesdays on like a chop cross for guys that had hands that went from low to high when they were rising from their hips up towards my chest. And so it would, increase my chance of actually hitting his hands and not missing. And then the last day we'd work on Wednesday, we'd work on a long arm. But if we were getting a week where we were getting a certain type of guy that consistently gave us stuff, then I would have my guys work specifically on a specific move, or a counter off of that. So that would be the first quick 10 minutes of practice. We'd kind of drill and progress through that. And, I got to work a little bit with BT Jordan, and got to see him work with our guys a little bit this past spring and the past year. And so stole a lot from him, and he helped me a lot in that capacity. And then we move from that and go to our kind of like everyday drills. And so everyday drills for us, because we're a strike and react team, started off on the sled. And so we were going to go through like a 6-point series. We wanted to work on them shooting hands out. Use a lot of Pete Davis philosophy with the old LSU stuff of like just coming out and striking. We're not really worried about the step initially. We want to create separation and jump out of our stance. And so that's kind of the foundation of all of how we play our everything. Because if we can't come out and pop people off the line of scrimmage, then we're not going to go anywhere. And so I think there's pros and cons to working on the sled because we don't have the great sleds that show like the shoulder or the arm on top of it, because I'm pretty picky about where their hands go. I want them on the bicep and the chest, because I know once it hits the bicep, it's probably going to raise up to the shoulder and be right where it's supposed to be anyway. And then one hand's in the middle of the chest, and we're maintaining outside leverage. And even when we rub as a 5 technique, if they end up head up on the guy, then you're pulling his full body weight versus having for him to have to reach at me because I'm on his edge. He's having to step and work to me, or he's leaning back away from me. And so it's pretty pertinent that we stay on his half side. And then, and when we strike and come out, we have to like try to create knockback with our hands. And so it's not really about how hard we hit them, but how we get our hands on them. And so I want to be able to get my hands on them quickly, lock them out, lock my elbows out, which me pushing through my feet should create enough force to be able to do that. So we'll go through a series on the sleds, working through that, and then we'll work on our rub technique, where we work on them actually being fitted up with their arms already extended out, and then we'll work on the finished part of the rub and where they work from that. These are just kind of like fundamental, how do we do what we do drills, and so that takes about 5 to 7 minutes. It doesn't take a whole lot of time out of our day, and then we'll move into block rec, and block rec will look different week to week. We base it off the scouting report and based off what we get. And so block rec could come from a tight end and a tackle. If we're getting, tight ends on us all week, then we're going to have a tight end and a tackle in our block rec. If we were getting a whole lot of fullback that week, then we'll have a one-on-one block session. Then we might have a session where we're having a tackle and a fullback in the game. And we'll rep through our 5 and our 7 technique versus, what they'll do. We'll work through stunts versus those blocks, or slants. We'll work through double teams, we'll work through the whole 9 yards of what we'll see that week, and we try to focus on what we're going to be getting week to week. From there, this is a drill I think I picked up from Coach Harmon at UMHB, and I called it mesh drill. And so really what it was is, a lot of times DNs end up getting red and being put on their feet and have the chance to have to make the play, or they're the guy that's being read and they're the guy that's in conflict. And so mesh drill became an everyday drill for me, and it took 5 to 10 minutes. And that, again, was something that we took from the scouting report of what are the plays we're being read on? What do they need to see? And so in the spring, we holistically install it where they see about everything. And so we'll do a 1-back mesh where I actually have 4 DNs and 4 lines, and I have 4 guys standing as offensive tackles, and everybody's giving me a down block, and I'm standing in the middle. So I have 2 DNs on each side of me, 2 DNs to my right, 2 DNs to my left. Everybody's getting a down block, and I'll have it where the back is set to them, the back is set away from them, and they're working through 5 technique and 7 technique. Where do they work to? Who are they working to? How do they play it? Do we slow play it? Do we fast play it? Are we going to be chasing the back? Or are we not going to be chasing the back? And then we'll add usually we do it from a 1-back perspective. We're getting a whole lot of that. If we get to a lot of gun split where we're getting 2 backs side by side, then we'll have them work through a lot of those reps and kind of how that will change and adjust, and where I want them to read and look at. And then we'll also go through a pistol progression if we're getting any pistol that week. And so we'll run through that, and then usually by the time we get through some of that stuff, we get through a block destruction drill from the day. Usually Mondays it's going to be base blocks, and we would go through a base block destruction, and then we would add a tackle to it eventually. And so, or we would work on just one-on-one tackling towards the end of that. And then usually Tuesdays was when I would work reach blocks, block destruction, add a tackle to it, and we could work tackling right after that. And so all those things we would squeeze into our indie time and work variations off of it and try to we're getting how we actually come out of our stance. We're getting a block recognition part out of it. We're getting a block destruction part out of it, and we're going to work on the tackling aspect out of it. And that's kind of like where I would focus most of the indie time on.
Yeah, I mean that covers all the skills that you need to have to be successful, no matter who you're playing that week or what type of offense or I think it's important to kind of have that library of drills that broken down into skills and different things that you need to make sure you're hitting, so that you can make sure you're getting all those areas. And then if there is a breakdown, you can go back and look, okay, where do we need some more work this week, or where can we maybe combine some things, kind of like what you're talking about, combining tackling with block destruction, in order to increase that efficiency. Well, great stuff, Coach. We're gonna kind of begin to wrap things up here, but we're not letting you off the hook that easy. We're gonna get you out of here with some rapid fire questions. So, what do you say, Coach? You down for all that?
Sounds great. Let's go.
Okay. All right. Now here's the deal. So we got some classics, some questions that we've asked in the past, and then I got some new ones that I'm gonna try out on you. And they could be one hit wonders, or there may be ones that we keep around for a while. But here we go. We'll start off with a couple of softballs here to get you going, Coach. All right. So when it comes to two Texas foods that are staples, here in our state, which one are you going with, barbecue or Tex-Mex?
Tex-Mex any day of the week.
Okay.
I love good Mexican food.
Where's the spot in Magnolia to go get some Tex-Mex?
So I actually don't live directly in Magnolia. I actually live in Montgomery, which is about 20 minutes north of that. And so El Bosque is a pretty good spot. It's a chain spot, and I think that I'm a little biased to it because the service there is pretty good. I think it's kind of like, I'm like Norm from Cheers when I walk in. I think they know my face too much, so I enjoy going there.
Okay. All right, here's your next one. Favorite stadium to play or coach in besides your own?
Oof. I really enjoyed playing at Lobo Stadium this past year. Like, they have a really cool setup of how they have their athletic facilities. They did it right when they built that. That's a pretty unique experience to play in.
Yeah, we got to play a playoff game there a few years ago, and I really I'd driven by it before, but never actually played in it or coached in it. And the pine trees surrounding it, and then their facility. You walk out of their facility down onto the field is really cool. So you're right, it's a great setup and a great venue for a football game for sure. Okay, so we are wrapping up college football by the time this thing drops, and getting close to wrapping up the NFL. For you, are you more of a college football or NFL fan?
I would love to say I'm a college football fan, but I'm a pretty poor college football fan because having kids, it's pretty hard to be able to turn a football game on from time to time. But I would be a college football fan more than the NFL. Okay.
You have a team that you root for more than others?
I grew up a Texas Longhorn fan, and always been, whenever they're on, I'm going to tune in the game and see what's going on with them. And that's kind of been my team since I was young, and don't really have any other affiliation, but that's just who I loved to watch growing up, and saw Colt McCoy and saw them go to the national championship a few times, and that's who I love to watch.
I got you. Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I've probably mentioned on this podcast before, my dad and uncles went to Texas, and so and my granddad, and so kind of grew up pulling for the Longhorns. And I'm not as diehard as I used to be as a kid, but we'll still pull for them for sure when they're on every weekend. And it's been rough the last couple of years, so hopefully they'll turn the corner, especially with the signing class they got. Okay, Coach. So you can see with me, I just got a brand new stash of these in my stocking. These Pilot G2, either 7s or 10s. That's my writing utensil of choice. Just curious for you, what's your writing utensil of choice, pen or pencil? And then even within that, do you have a preference?
It is that exact pen you're holding in your hand right now. That is my favorite pen. It's the easiest to write with. It strikes well.
And I love the click. It clips on my shorts. I've been trying. I've been promoting these for seems like forever now on this podcast. You think someone with Pilot would listen and throw us a sponsorship or something? At least give me some free pens, because I do go through them, quite often. But anyway, yeah, that's I'm in 100% agreement with you there. Okay, you mentioned, and we didn't really have time to talk about the lifting aspect, and we're getting into off season now, and what kind of program you're putting together for your guys there. But what is for your guys, what's your favorite lift for them, and I'm going to take out squats. So let's take squats away. 'Cause that's everyone's, generally everyone's favorite, not the kids' favorite, but the coach's favorite. What's your favorite lift to have those guys do besides squats?
So we do something. It would be kind of like a jammer almost, but so what we do is we have it rigged up on a landmine, and we have a T-bar that goes on top of it. And so I think it's really applicable to football because you get it kind of more in that, that outward horizontal, plane. We're not just pulling a power clean that goes straight up. And I love power cleans. I love the benefit of that and squats, but I think that, when you're having to generate force and moving outward and kind of getting your hips exploding out more like a broad jump per se, you're getting into a different kind of realm of training, and you're getting to like a realm that's more, sport specific to what we do. And so I think it kind of teaches kids to snap their hips out and to use their hands and their hips together as well. Cause it's almost like a push press and out in front of me, and it's kind of hard to emulate that and anywhere else, but having it in a fixed plane, it's not perfect, but I think it kind of gets the job done.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay. Well, let's talk about this. I know for me, and I can tell myself here in a second, but what's a word or phrase you use all the time in practice that, if I were to talk to your guys in your position group, that's, oh yeah, here it is. What's a word or phrase that you use all of the time in practice with your guys?
Spill it. We're a spill team. And so, especially more so with the younger guys, and I guess than the older guys, it's just, when we're getting guys that are coming to kick us out, we're spilling everything. So spill it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's, that's a great phrase to have as a D-line coach. And maybe we could, you could also almost call this podcast the Spill It podcast, because that's another one that D-line coaches find themselves saying a lot. I didn't realize, well, I know that I say, rock and roll a lot because our guys rock and roll, especially, against zone schemes. They're rocking and rolling into their gaps or getting vertical through the line of scrimmage. One thing that I didn't know I said this a lot, but then I overheard some kids making fun of me in the locker room this year is I guess I say no cool guys a lot, or don't be a cool guy or whatever. Yeah. And so they kind of give me a hard time about that. But, hey, again, if they're going to get on me about something, then I'm okay with that being one of the ones that they associate with me, because I guess I'm kind of passionate when it comes to that issue. But that's a whole nother podcast topic in and of itself. We'll leave that one alone for now. We'll move on to the next question. All right, Coach. It's that time of year where guys are making New Year's resolutions, and maybe they're wanting to get in shape, or they're wanting to learn something different when it comes to coaching their position, or maybe learn another side of the ball, learn the other side of the ball more. Do you make New Year's resolutions, and if so, give us one?
I do. Working out's really not on that. I get up pretty early to work out every day anyway. So it's kind of something I do, just kind of make myself sane throughout the day. But for me, I try to do my best to learn. I'm a D-line coach, but I've coached DBs before. And I really try to pick the brains of our other coaches on staff and, in the back end, and try to learn as much as I can from front to back, so I can know how to, best, if I'm, with a team by myself, or if I'm with a group by myself, I could coach that position up pretty well. I could do it. I could do it all from the front to the back. And so that's kind of been my goal, is just kind of like sure up, specifically on how they drill and do things from the back end, and make sure that I'm, saying the same things that they're saying from the the back end talk. Because I know a lot of times, you have your D-line coach, or you have your DB coach that kind of doesn't really get a lot of the same verbiage from each other because they don't have to. And so, but I think we do a pretty good job of talking to each other on our staff. And, my goal this summer, this next fall, and this next, throughout this next year has been to, sure up that I'm talking about in the back end.
Yeah, that's that's something I actually heard it from a college coach who was coming through recruiting a few weeks ago. Said that at the end of the season, some point during the off season, they will each coach will get up and basically coach up the other coaches in the room on their position. Kind of go through it using their verbiage and things that they're looking for, and their key. All the things that they're gonna, and it's almost like he said, it's almost like a lot of times they'll have the GAs do that as well. And it's almost like that's their job interview, but what it does is it makes sure that everyone, so if you are a linebackers coach and you're talking to the safeties behind you or the D-line in front of you, you're using the same language as their coach does, and the same term, everyone's on the same, or aligned in the things that they're talking about. And I think that was a great idea and something we definitely want to try to do at our place. So yeah, I like that. And I'm constantly, being a D-line guy at heart, I'm always sort of making myself gravitate towards the secondary and keep learning more, about the back end, because there is so much to learn when it comes to that. All right. Next question is, and this is one that they asked during the coverage of the state championship games last month. And I think I've asked it on this podcast before, but it's always a question worth asking. Who is the best Texas high school football player that you've seen in person?
Oof. Okay. So I would probably say this past season, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was the stud receiver from Longview that was 5-star. My gosh, the guy was incredible. As a kid that, was big, tall, strong, fast. I think there was a play that he broke about 6 tackles on us and, single-handedly just took it to the house himself, almost took a 5-yard hitch. And, you probably don't think that's just that impressive off top, but watch him in person. He was all that in a bag of chips from what he was talked up to be.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I'm trying to get my stats person over here, which is also myself, to Google that really quick, because I know the kid. I just can't think. You're right. I'm blanking on his name, but anyway, yeah, I've we're not too far away from them, so I see a lot of their highlights and stuff, and I know that he is a dude for sure. Okay, here's the last question for you, and it might get you in trouble with the guys on your staff, and maybe bring you really close to another one. But if you were had to be stranded on an island with one coach from your staff, who are you rolling with, and why?
Oof, man, put me in a corner. I would probably go with, like, my gut decision. This is what my heart probably says off the top of my head. Coach Wayne Childs. He's a pretty wise guy. I feel like he would get us out of a tight spot. He knows a lot about a lot, and what he doesn't know, that I think that he does a pretty good job trying to help figure it out. So I think he would at least have my back in it. Wouldn't try to backstab me or steal my food.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's important. And that's a question, when you think you're close to the guys on your staff and then you throw that question and they're like, oh man, okay. I like these guys, but that's a whole nother level.
That's hard, because I got a lot of guys on staff I really, really like, and I could easily have said any one of them. And I guess I'm giving the political answer at this point. But.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I don't think that, that's okay. Maybe that's one you can throw out there next time y'all have a meeting and just see what everybody else says. But anyways, well, Coach, really appreciate you coming on and sharing some things with us. Really a lot of great stuff from our conversation today. I know these guys will benefit from listening to. So just want to thank you and tell you guys best of luck this offseason.
Yes, sir. Thank you.